I'm 26 years old, and I'm part of the generation searching for meaning. When I talk about my generation, I talk about the ones that grew up in the age of the internet. The young generation which has immediate access to information, and as such that know what is happening on the other side of the world. This generation will have a critical role to play in the coming years. They are the ones who grew up in Western countries and never faced war or real poverty. Because of our privileged background, our happiness is not only about money and security. We need more. The Maslow pyramid depicts this phenomenon. We are driven by a quest for meaning. To blossom, we need a purpose. Our own introspection leads us to question the society regarding the loss of common sense which characterize our postmodern civilization. We demand more justice and transparency both in business and political matters. We realized the emergency to get the grips with climate change and to act quickly. We want to live in a world aligned with our values, and therefore we are looking for meaningful jobs. Witness the booming number of young entrepreneurs in Western countries driven by a strong work ethic. In our pursuit of happiness, we need to feel useful. We need a job with a positive impact in society. So if you are in that period of your life where you question yourself, if you want as well a job which enables you to thrive while doing the right thing, if you are sincerely interested in the meaning of your life, and if you cannot stop questioning yourself about the role you have to play in the world, I have a message for you. This is not a standard documentary. It's the story of my own introspection. How my life experiences lead me to deep dive into the working conditions of factory workers in South India, and to what extent it helped find my mission on Earth. Two years ago, while working for one of the leading global sportswear companies, I was amazed by the special treatment the company was offering its employees. Working for Nike means getting a competitive salary, free access to sports facilities, high-quality offices, and team-building activities for staff motivation and engagement. Because an engaged employee is a productive one, Nike invests in its employees. Do you know Nike mission statement? It's to bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world. To this extent, Nike empowers each one of us to go far beyond our limits. And our generation has a natural affinity for companies which embody strong values of achievement and inclusion such as Nike's. So did I. After a few months, I loved the brand and put all my energy into my job, because I was inspired by the values the brand promoted and deeply attached to the corporate culture. It felt like a family, the Nike family. But who were the members of this family? Would a factory worker be considered as my brothers? Would they be treated as my equal? In reality, do these brands operate coherently with the values they stand for? I wasn't sure. I wanted to dig into what I perceived as the contradiction between the company's culture and the reality of the working conditions in factories. So I started my investigation and went to the merchandising director of Nike Europe at that time to ask him about the working conditions inside the factories Nike was working with. His answer was sharp and straightforward. Manufacturing Nike products raises the standards of living in developing countries. Workers get enticing salary, which can provide both a roof and food for an entire family. Workers are then happy to work for Nike. This answer triggered my curiosity, and for good reason. Sadly, Nike also goes with child labor. Back in 1997, Nike came under fire after the release of a picture showing a Pakistani young boy stitching Nike's footballs. The public opinion is shocked and calls for more transparency. This scandal is about to change again. Major American brands will look towards implementing rules on child labor in order to never again face those shameful images. The pressure was so intense that brands had no other choice but to guarantee a minimal control of their suppliers overseas. Out of transparency, some of them started to publish a rough list of their official suppliers. It's important to insist on the word official. Indeed, the sportswear industry works with a network of multiple suppliers. Very often, suppliers will outsource part of their production to other suppliers. The issue is that brands only publicly disclose the direct suppliers. As such, the very first supplier only can be localized and can undergo controls. The rest of the chain remains unknown and absolutely no control can be done, which often results in lower wages and poor working conditions. To get a fair idea of the current situation, I had to go and meet the workers myself. I choose India, where 30,000 people work at the moment for those official suppliers. So driven by a thirst for knowledge, I took my bag, my camera, and I booked a flight for India. Welcome to India. With more than 1.3 billion of inhabitants and 89 different dialects, India is a land of cultural diversity. The country has a strong spiritual background. Here, celebrations are at the heart of people's lives. As such, many Westerners looking for answers go to India to reconnect with themselves. But India is also a land of contradictions, a country with an exponential economic growth, yet struggling with an archaic patriarchy, a deeply unequal society controlled by a modern constitution. In 2019, while 25% of the population lives on less than $2.5 a day, 89% of the population has a cell phone. This shows how complex the market is. The country is divided into 29 states with different regulations. The Ministry of Labor sets the legal framework around wages. However, there are some state-level laws which are applicable. In Karnataka, the sixth wealthiest state in India, where I conducted the interviews, the minimum wage for the semi-skilled workers is about 4.6 euros a day. Karnataka has over 4.5 million people working in the garment industry, among which 85% are women. In most cases, these women are the main provider for the whole family. Despite the brand's transparency concerning their direct suppliers, it had been very complicated to find the exact location of the factories, and impossible to enter or to get an appointment with the local management. But here I am, in front of one factory listed as Nike's supplier and ready to interview some workers. It's 5:30 in the afternoon and it's already quite hectic at the entrance. Thousands of workers are leaving the factory to reach their homes, and they seem uncomfortable opening up to me in front of the gate. We have to find a trick to start a dialogue. My translator and I follow them and infiltrate the company bus. Here we could see their employees' badges, which include the name of Nike's supplier. With appropriate time to clear our intentions, we slowly built up the trust. We were here to listen and get a glimpse into the workers' reality.
I live in Bangalore and I work for this company as a tailor. I've been working here for 5 months already. We make trousers, t-shirts and jackets for Puma and Adidas.
First, we realized that suppliers had no signed exclusive contracts with one brand.
I'm paid around 102 to 108 euros per month, and this year will be paid more later. Company has many good systems and facilities. They provide proper safety and they have canteen facility as well.
Codes of conduct and internal committees have been implemented in factories to report workers' complaints and create an atmosphere of dialogue.
I'm a tailor. We stitch with machines. Yes, we do. We use masks and gloves. And we also have working aprons.
Great efforts have been made to improve the health and security in the workplace over the past 20 years. However, the general work environment remains toxic, especially for female workers.
If we come across bad supervisors, that is a problem. Most of the time, even if we work properly, some supervisor will shout at us, injure us, use, very bad words, even though we don't do anything bad. They yell at us, abuse us, and shout at us like, move out from here. Those bad things.
In this industry, harassment is a really common issue. The management is made of men who often cross the line of respect and dignity.
So when we look at the conditions in the factories, workers, the senior managements are mostly positions held by men. That's the supervisory positions are held by men, and women are working on the shop floor as tailors or helpers or cutters, trimmers, and other packers, other jobs. So there is a huge power dynamics in the industry that is since the men are in the supervisory role, they feel that you can scream at women and you can get work done.
Harassment at work gets worse when the targets drastically increase. Workers work under great strain and are pushed to produce more within the same time frame. Targets are then a sensitive topic, but one worker accepted to discuss it with us.
We have to produce 100 pieces per hour, but we generally manage to make 70 to 80.
The production speed is set to reach unrealistic goals. And what happens if the workers do not meet the target?
We're supposed to have half an hour for food, but if there is a problem with the machines, if the pieces don't move as expected, it is our problem. We should finish lunch in 10 minutes and move back to work.
Regardless of the reason, when the workload increases, workers have to do overtime hours, which are generally unpaid. Ironically, workers call them OC, as for overtime free of cost, instead of OT. So let's calculate the margin allocated to the workforce. There is on average 100 workers on the production chain. Those workers have to produce 100 units per hour and work 8 hours per day. Therefore, they create 800 pieces each day. By taking one of the cheapest branded products, a t-shirt sold at 30 euros, Each day, the workforce creates a value worth of 24,000 euros, whereas the total payroll per day is 500 euros. Consequently, workers get only 2% of the value they create. And that's when I realized that despite a stressful work environment, workers' major concern remains financial compensations.
In cities like Bangalore, house rent cannot be less than 64 euros. For a decent house, we have to pay even more. With the current salary, it is not possible. We need an increase in salary. They pay 102 to 115 euros per month, and even if we work overtime, in the best case scenario, what the tailor gets is 125 euros maximum.
Asia for Wages, a global coalition of human rights organizations, confirms it. It has calculated a living wage of 308 euros a month in that state of India. A living wage is a salary a person could live on in dignity and safety. With a maximum of 125 euros a month, the current workers' wages fall far below the living wage.
We went on strike in order to raise our salaries to 190 euros per month, but it didn't work. We've been asked to work on Sundays, so 7 days a week, to make up for the working hours lost due to strike. If we get proper salary, we could work happily and contribute even better. It's been 6 years that a government rule has put the minimum wage at 190 euros per month, but nothing has been implemented yet.
In 2017, the online platform Good On You stated that even if big brands passed the entire cost of paying living wages on to consumers, it would cost only an extra 1% of the retail price. It's just 30 cents for a 30 euros t-shirt. Will you be ready to pay for that?
I've been working for the same company for 12 years. You have asked about the committee efficiency, but if anything like that was working, we would have been promoted. There are committees in many companies, but they are useless. Even after 10 years of hard work, we are in the same position and we have the same salary. If we speak about salaries or argue with them, they would fire us. So we cannot speak, and we have to work according to their instructions.
Parvati Madappa confirms that internal committees do not live up to their statutory obligations.
You see, in most of the cases, these factories committees are just for namesake. None of these committees are very functional. You would see that the committees would have members who are who talk in favor of the managements and not in favor of the workers. So where do these workers go to then?
Brands, together with local management, have implemented committees and programs and are improving the work environment. However, those measures are vain because of the tacit collusion between the committees and the management. And the programs are doomed to remain nothing but cosmetic measures as long as they do not include local insights. One good example is the Well-Being Employees program, implemented by some brands in 2018. The program consisted in educating workers on how to be healthier by eating fruits and washing their hands. Nonetheless, does it make sense to teach about health when workers cannot even afford to buy a soap? Plenty of voluntary initiatives and codes of conduct have been signed in recent years by companies trying to assert their corporate social responsibility goals. But many of these initiatives have no impact on the real life of workers. Brands need to deep dive into the Indian culture and reality to design truly efficient programs. If they did so, they would have realized that most female workers have dependent children. In reality, the wages that workers get do not ensure both a roof and food for an entire family in South India. The reality of the situation is outrageous, but it was nothing compared to what I was about to discover.
Please, don't disclose my name. When the audit company comes, they create fake payslips. During the audit, the management keeps the documents required by the buyers and instructs workers to talk in favor of the company. They call 2 workers from each batch, they take their IDs, and then the management briefs those workers on how to speak and what to say. They are not allowed to speak about salaries at all.
This situation questions the role of audit companies. If they do not look further for reliable and accurate information, they risk missing out on corporate misconduct. Despite appearances, the current system in place does not allow workers to be heard, neither does it provide them the means to improve their situations. So what are the other options? To whom can they turn to? The 14th article of the Indian Constitution gives every citizen the permission to form an association and so allows trade unionism and collective bargaining. However, very few workers in the garment industry have joined unions, resulting in a limited leverage power in the sector. In Bangalore, there is 3 trade unions with gather only 15,000 people, while the area covers over 600,000 workers. It represents only 2.5% of the workforce. Sebastian de Verage, the Vice President of Karnataka Garment Workers Union, and Udit Sharma, a specialist in public policies, explain us the reasons for workers' low engagement.
That is one of the major factors that is preventing workers from entering into some sort of a collective action is fear.
In fact, in some cases, workers are subjected to threats and intimidations when they want to join unions.
Export follows some of the very minimum labor standards. But as far as freedom of association is concerned, most export industries don't want to entertain anyone, and they were very openly against unionization.
This shows another inconsistency. Brands spend money and time to implement committees and at improving the dialogue, but still prevent trade unions to grow in the sector. Moreover, when a conflict of interest arises, people working in those factories do not have the time nor the skills to assess properly the situation.
Most of the people in these kind of setup are not educated, are not aware about their rights, are not aware about the regulations, their powers, their rights and everything.
So in some cases, workers have mistakenly come to think that trade union is responsible for the closure of factories. Besides, the fast-changing environment makes it very difficult for trade unions to grow and be effective. As a result, workers have very few opportunities to improve their situations on their own.
Hare Hare
So here I am, back home, with all those insights of the situation in India. Despite a controversial work environment, workers' major concern is to get a decent salary, but have no power to negotiate with their counterparts. So now, what can we do? Who has the power to change the situation? I guess it all starts with a good legal framework. The state of India could design laws to provide workers with better protections. Moreover, a budget envelope should be allocated to ensure regular controls are made to avoid corruption, which is endemic in India. As such, the state has a role to play in improving the working conditions in the sportswear industry, providing there is some kind of political will behind it. Then, the local management in return must respect these rules and regulations. They must provide workers with a safe environment which fosters good mental health. And what about the brands? Can they be held responsible for the health and safety of people who work for them? When the Rana Plaza factory collapsed in 2013, killing more than 1,000 workers, the world was shocked. 4 years later, thanks to the collective efforts of some 20 civil society organizations, France adopted a pioneering law on the field of human and workers' rights, relating to the duty of care of parent companies and ordering companies. In practical terms, this law requires French businesses with more than 5,000 employees in France or 10,000 in the world to identify and prevent human rights and environmental violations resulting not only from their own activities, but also from their subsidiaries, subcontractors, and suppliers abroad. This constitutes a major historic step. Indeed, companies can finally be held legally accountable for harms to people and to the environment. It should pave the way for similar laws in Europe and drive positive changes in companies' practices. However, at the moment, only an estimated 150 companies are concerned, and not all of them presented a complete vigilance plan in 2018, despite the statutory obligation to do so. With turnovers in billions of dollars, brands have yet a tremendous lever for action. They could set wages at the living wage level, improving workers' engagement and so productivity. Not only it will ensure long-term relationship with their suppliers, but also amplifying their brand images. Brands have more to win than to lose, as today, social responsibility is becoming a key factor when choosing a brand. Because at the end of the day, it all comes down to us, the consumers. We are the ones who make the system last. All the things we buy, all the money we spend have an impact. I wanted to highlight the brand's inconsistencies, but first I had to face my own contradictions. Now I invite you to realize our own hypocrisy, allowing us to call for justice and refuse to change our consumption mode. We have a tremendous power. Abstention from brands which do not support the move is our greatest weapon. Each one of us has a role to play. So be curious, question the established order, and trust yourself. You are unique, and you bear in yourself the seed for change. So listen to your inner voice and act for what you believe in. More freedom, more justice, more solidarity. It's all about knowing yourself and the inner shadow which prevents you from acting. By shadow, I mean the fear of failure, the fear of rejection, or the fear of change. It's only once you understand your own shadow that you will be able to act on it and free yourself, though paving the way for the contribution to the world. All generations chose a fight and achieved significant social progresses. Right now, stop and stare. Observe the world and identify the dysfunctions. Then, choose your fight. By aligning your actions with your values, you will find your place in society. You will find the true meaning of your life. I did not change the world, but I changed myself. By letting go my thirst for recognition, I gave workers a voice and found out that empowering people is what makes me thrill. And you, what makes you thrill?